Hey, welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and start a surface design demo. And what I'm going to start with is an image that I printed off of the internet. That it can either be an image that you've drawn or that you found. And I'm going to take some dry cleaner plastic. It's thin and strong, and I can cut it down to the size that I need, and I'm going to lay it on top of my image, which I have this mid-century modern chair. And I'm going to take a fine black permanent marker, I think this is like a Sharpie, and I'm just going to trace that image onto the dryer sheet plastic. And then once I have it drawn, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and then lay it over another chair. So they almost kind of look like they're tumble stacked, but that's just my own personal preference. You don't have to do this, but definitely transfer your design onto the plastic. And then from that we'll be able to make it into a paper design that we can get onto our pots. So by laying it over, I'm creating one chair in the foreground and one chair in the background, and I can keep going all the way around to make a design that would extend for the cylinder. But I already have one done, so I'm going to go ahead and scrap that off to the side and show you I have another chair that I've done multiple chairs, so there's a lot in the foreground, a lot in the background. And what's really great about using the plastic is now I can lay this plastic easily around my design or around my cylinder to see if the design fits. Is it too small? Is it too big? I can kind of push it down. And because it's see-through, I can get an idea of what it's going to look like in the placement. So now I'm going to take that piece of plastic and I'm going to lay it down on the photocopier. And with a good clean white sheet of paper I'm going to put on top, and I'm going to make a photocopy. And that will give me my template that I'll be able to make into my graphite sheet, almost like tracing paper, not tracing paper, but the old graphite copy paper. What's really great is by doing that I can take the image I like, shrink it, make it larger. If it's going to fit on my cylinder, if it's too big, too small, I can adjust. So I'm going to flip it over, and around my design, I'm going to take a really soft graphite pencil. This here is going to be a 6B. Can't really see, it didn't really go into focus that well, but it's a 6B graphite pencil. And I'm going to push really, really hard on the back and draw and draw and draw, and just create that carbon paper. So I'll flip it over, cut it out, and I'm going to make little dart lines all the way around my piece. So if my cylinder isn't a perfect cylinder, if it has some sort of an angle or a little bit of a cone shape to it, like most coffee mugs have a slight little curve to it. You can see the curve on that side there. So by putting those dart lines in, I can get it to move around the piece a little bit easier. And now I'm just going to go ahead and lay it down, just kind of get an idea of where I want that to go. Just give it a good judge. I got a piece of foam so I can place it on there, because my piece is soft, is just past soft leather hard. But it's soft enough to be able to take pressure on the surface and make an indent, but it's not hard enough that it won't absorb, and I don't want it to be too soft that when I push pressure that it squishes it out of round and it kind of makes that rim go oval. I've got my tool at an angle, so it's not using that tip of that pin tool. I'm more burnishing a line in there. It's going to transfer the carbon, and it's also going to make a little bit of a depression in the surface. There is white slip on the surface of the pot. That way I can use the Sgraffito as a way. Sgraffito is basically carving into the surface of the clay and revealing another color underneath. So there's a white slip on the outside and the clay body is darker. So once I scratch through that surface, which I'll do in the next step, I'll be able to create a line that you can see by making that contrast. All right, so I've gone around and I've traced the paper. Now I'm going to go back with my pen tool and lightly scratch into that white surface. And I don't want to use my hand to brush, so there's going to be some like little nibbly bits that come up off of the piece. If your slip or your surface is soft enough, when you use your hand, you're just going to press it back into those little lines that you've created. And those lines are basically microscopic canals. They're just little depressions. And so I want to take that makeup brush or that really fluffy brush and brush off the bits instead of using my hand to want to brush it away. So another advantage of using that plastic with your image on it is, let's say you miss a transfer line, you can easily line up that image onto your pot and to be able to see if you missed a line. So apparently I look like I missed a space in one of the feet, or where the two joined together, and I was able to lay that back down. If I was using just the paper, I wouldn't be able to really figure out where that paper needs to go back. So now I can line it up, fix my little line, and move on to continuing the Sgraffito. Now I'm just going to go back and redefine all those lines, maybe make a little accent lines that weren't drawn on there just to give it some dimension. And then a final brush off just to make sure everything is where it needs to be. So now I'm going to move to coloring the surface of the chairs. And you can see I'm using a dot of Underglaze. That's all I've used in that original amount of clay that, or Underglaze that's on that tile. It's literally just a dot, and then I've added water. This will not go back into the Underglaze jar because I've watered it down so much, but it's literally just a dot of glaze, just enough to get a watercolor effect. I want a light color on the surface. I don't want when I put the color on for it to fill the lines. I just want it to sit on the surface of that white and it to be variated in color. And you'll see afterwards, once there's a lot on there, you can see how it does look like watercolor, and it's very, very faint. It's not a thick coating of Underglaze. So just out of choice, I'm going to leave one chair white and the rest are all going to have color. I didn't forget about one. It was done on purpose. And then I'll go back in with just a little dot of brown to fill in the feet on the chair. If you have a good latex resist that you can peel off, this is a really great time to use that latex. I did not, so I'm going to go ahead and use the purple wax. And before I start anything, I want to make sure that those little crumbly bits that kind of came off of when we were doing our Sgraffito have been removed. We don't want that to stick in the wax or just kind of halo onto our pot. We want to get rid of it all. So I'm going to go back in with my brush and I'm only covering and painting where the chair is. You have the option to use that line exactly or halo around so there's almost like a white border around your image. For this specific one, I've chosen to use the line pretty specifically as my don't go beyond line. So I'm going to color within the lines. Now the key to making a successful wax resist is to let it set up for a good couple hours. That's going to make sure that that is hard on the surface, and when you do your wiping away for your next step, that you're not wiping away that wax as well. So in order to kind of speed that up, I waited some time and I also put it into the refrigerator, kind of harden up that underglaze. I mean, harden up the wax. It almost looks like underglaze because it's purple, but the wax is tinted purple. So I'm just going to spin a color. I'm going to make sure that my brush stays in the same angle. So which part is up is going to stay up. So and I'm going to put a second color on the top and they're going to come down and meet. And I will always want to make sure that my brush direction stays the same. So I'm going to get a nice amount of underglaze on there where they blend together. So I want the top to be very, very bright, vivid orange or vivid yellow, and the orange at the bottom. And then where they meet in the middle is where they're going to start to blend. So I'm going to keep rotating back and forth. This is where that Lazy Susan comes in super handy. I don't know why they call it a Lazy Susan, because it does all the work. See, if that wax was not firm and solid, me brushing back and forth could have easily started to degrade that wax. Sometimes wax is water soluble, and it doesn't mean that it's just going to wash off with water, but it does mean it sometimes does break down on the surface and wears through a little bit. But if you have a really good coat of your wax, and your wax is really dry and it's really hard on the surface, you'll be able to get an easier removal of the underglaze that's on top. So now I'm going to come in with a clean water and a clean sponge and lightly remove each little spot of underglaze that's resting on top of the wax on top of the chairs. So here is a handle that was made and set up. We're going to do a specific video on handles. This is a handle that was a double handle pull, so that means that you're pulling with both hands. I took a Zoom workshop with Kip O'Krongley, which is the inspiration of this mug. She did in her demo a two-handed handle pull, which I'd never done before, and it ended up creating a really comfortable handle. So that will be in a video to come, and we'll do a video specifically on handles. So now on this we have to be very careful because we are going to attach the handle where the underglaze already is. So our method of really smoothing into the surface and really trying to make that handle become one, it's going to be a little bit tricky. So we have to be a little bit more delicate with our moves. We have to be a little bit more thoughtful with what we're doing, so we're not smushing and mushing that underglaze on the underside. So I'm going to line up my handle and I'm going to make little marks, and I'm going to score, add a little water, and score again. So some people score, slip, and move on. I'm a score, slip, score again. I'm scoring it to create surface. I'm adding water to saturate that clay, and then I'm going to rescore again once the water's on there, so it makes slip with the actual clay that's on the surface. So they kind of talk to each other a little bit better. They become friends. I always tell the kids at summer camp, if you don't score really well, it's more like a fist bump. So when you're scoring and you're making those little marks, you want to make a whole bunch of marks so they become the fingers that hold the hands together. You can't hold hands without fingers. So without that, it's literally just a fist bump. If you don't score really well, it's going to pop off. And unfortunately, the actual handle attaching part got deleted and did not record. So we will go ahead and include the handle attaching in the next video. And here we go. Here's the finished product. Hope you guys enjoy. I hope this inspires you guys to find some images and get them on some pots. And we'll meet again in the studio. Have a good one.